9:16 here on the morning show with Jeff and Will. It's AM 1700 WRCR, Haverstraw, WRCR.com. I had to freshen up a little bit. I just came back from the little boys'
Well, I didn't
room.
know what you were doing.
I was waiting for the...
Okay. All right.
We had things to technically do. But now we go over to our phone lines. We have Tina Trasser from the Rockland County Business Journal. Good morning, Tina.
Good morning, Rockland County. How is everybody today?
We're good, thank you very much. How are you?
I am fine. I'm going to talk about a couple of development-related things today. More senior housing coming to Clarkstown, but this particular development brings with it a gain and a loss. Let me talk about the good news first. So we're talking about Vanderbilt Grand, which is going to be a 55 and older development on a piece of Route 304, not far from the town hall complex. This is a piece of land that's been empty for a very long time, and a developer who plans to build a senior housing on that 5-acre parcel has traded an even larger parcel along Route 9W in Valley Cottage in order to make his plan move forward. The reason for that is that when a developer builds, they need to generally either pay a certain amount of money per unit, or they need to dedicate land in lieu of that money. And because the Weinbergers, who are the developers of this property, don't have excess property on that site, they struck a deal that has made hikers and the New York, New Jersey Trail Conference folks very happy. The town, Clarkstown, will be getting a 7-acre piece of parcel that was the last non-town-owned or privately owned piece of land along the Long Path. And this will now create a more contiguous walk or hike for people who will not have to now go along Christian Herald and 9W and walk along shoulders of roads with fast-moving cars. So, in addition, though, with this swap, it wasn't a one-for-one swap. Clarkstown, the town of Clarkstown, is going to have to write a $125,000 check to make up the difference of what this land is apparently appraised for, which was $400,000. I'm sorry, $525,000. And because the land in lieu of money swap would have only cost the developer $400,000, Clarkstown is stepping in with its open space funds, and like I said, spending $125,000 to complete this deal and to be able to get this piece of land and get rid of the obstruction for hikers. Now, that's the upside. For some, the downside is the loss of the historic train station that's been sitting on that property for a long time. We've all seen it from the road. It is the old New City branch. Don't know if any of you guys remember it. I have not been around long enough to have ever remembered seeing it. But it was part of the old New City train station building, which once served on the stop on a 3-mile single track of the New Jersey and New York Railroad that ran between the Nanuet Junction and New City until around the 1940s. And the building, is in bad shape, but we have precious few relics in our county. And again, we've talked about this on this radio show, and I've written extensively about, there are old properties that somehow find their way to being saved. The Traphagen House being one of them, the Crupsey Barn being a second, and there are some others that have been rescued from the wrecking ball. When the planning board last week gave preliminary site approval for the Vanderbilt Grand, a citizen had sent in a letter His name was Grafstein, and he said that, I'll read his quote. He said, "The tracks are long gone, but the remnants of the New City station remain." And he was asked. He said, "This structure is the final piece of physical evidence of the New City branch's existence. Preserving the history of this period in Rockland is vital to the region's identity and image." And so he was urging the local government to reconsider the restoration of the structure as a stipulation of the development of the property. Now, when that came up at the planning board, it was very, very clear that that train had left the station, and that the planning board was not interested in litigating anything around the preservation of that structure. Chairman Gilheim mentioned how 15 years ago, the Weinbergers, who own a shopping center, were going to try to relocate pieces there. Apparently it wasn't feasible. It never happened. But, if you just think about the old Congress train station, I mean, these are points of interest. They're very beautiful in their own right. And I think it's a little bittersweet that while we're gaining some open space for hiking, we're also losing a big piece of history, and so that is how this cookie crumbles. Any questions?
I know they managed to preserve a train station on the Erie path down in Piermont. Is there any possibility that you think that could happen with this?
I wish that it could. I mean, I have a strong predilection for history and historic preservation myself, and I wish that there could be a way for citizens to gather around this and make something happen. But you may recall a very long time ago, not that long ago, maybe 6-7 years ago, we lost something that was known as the Lent House down in Orangetown, Orangeburg. And that was a pre-Revolutionary era war house of sandstone that really was in pretty decent condition and should have been saved. But that got hit with the wrecking ball. That was totally unnecessary. You need the will of a group of people to step in, because what we learn time and again, unfortunately, I think this is most unfortunate, and maybe this doesn't happen everywhere, but the government, doesn't take a stand on things like this, and it doesn't say, well, we have an important piece of history here, and so we have to work around that. There was absolutely no interest on the part of the planning board to look at that issue, and so what was said was, well, people out there in the audience, if you're interested in, find some way to move the structure, but without the guidance of local government and the protection of local government, it becomes much harder for citizens to find a way to do that. I mean, I think Gilheim said, well, if you can find somebody out there to take it apart and store the pieces, yes, that's a big ask. And this application is now green-lighted and on the fast track now, and even though it's been pending for a long time and moving forward. The Propsy Barn is another example of something that could have been torn down. But I think that that is on land that is owned both by the county and the town of Clarkstown, and it's prominent, and it was in, I guess, good enough shape to have been resurrected and improved. I don't know the actual condition of these pieces, but sure, I mean, it would be lovely to see some sort of an effort to try to take this piece of history and save it. Old trains are, a real focal point in communities. So, and many things are, you take an old train station and they're often converted into coffee shops, or they're along rail trails, and they're points of interest, and they're just generally, lovely reminders of the nation at an earlier era. So, if anybody is out there that has the wherewithal, you've heard it here.
Indeed. What else can they read about on rcbizjournal.com?
Yeah. So talk to your friends, and let people on the radio, at other times know about this. Yeah. So the other thing I was just going to mention with my time remaining is this is a story that's another upstate story. We're looking a little bit more at some upstate stories, and in some cases they even have a relevance to Rockland County. So very recently, people may remember the Granite Hotel in the Catskills. That's probably familiar to you, right?
What did you say the name of it was? Granite?
Granite.
A Granite.
Jeff, you remember the Granite Hotel in the Catskills?
I don't. No, I can't say I remember a lot of the hotels in the Catskills. I don't remember the Granite. No.
You know, that's interesting. Okay, so that was another one of the iconic Borscht Belt hotels, and that has just been. It was bought for $7.5 million and flipped the same day to $12 million. And kind of the interesting story within the story is that the hotel had been purchased originally by HNA. Now, HNA is the same group, obviously, that lost the the IBM Center, the Palisades Training Center, recently to SL Green, and we've talked about that extensively. And so HNA bought this upstate hotel, and then it was bought again. This is several years ago by a pair of developers. And they turned it into the Hudson Valley Resort and Spa. And one of those gentlemen is the same guy who tried to purchase the HNA, Ephraim Vashovsky. He had tried to purchase HNA and left $8 million on the table when that deal didn't come through. Anyway, he and another developer, Yosef Zabloki, they owned this Granite Hotel together, and bad blood formed, and the hotel ended up in receivership, and the receiver sold it back to Zabloki, and then Zabloki turned around, flipped it for $12 million, and sold it to a gentleman named Akiva Klein, who is, if you drive along Route 17, the Quickway, and you see the massive development along on the right-hand side if you're going north. Mm-hmm. Does that ring a bell to anyone?
Oh,
everyone?
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so he's the developer of a place called Yoel Moshe Gardens. That's the name of that. This is in Curious Joel. So anyway, he's the one who's purchased this hotel. And so it's just going to be interesting. Now, his attorney tells us, oh, yes, he's just going to keep this as a hotel. But I suspect that we're going to start to see some of the really rampant development up in the Catskills, up in Sullivan County and Ulster County. That is also happening, of course, in Orange County and in Spring Valley here in Rockland County.
And we do trust you'll keep an eye on that. I'm sorry, Tina, we got to leave it there because we have a show coming up, and specifically it's Crossroads of Rockland History coming up right after this. Of course, check out rcbizjournal.com for more information, some of these other stories that Tina talks about. Thank you so much, Tina.
Okay, I hope that Crossroads of History bring up the train station.
They will at a future episode. Today is a recorded edition, so thank you so much. It's AM 1700 WRCR Haversham. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Crossroads of Rockland is next, and we'll be back tomorrow. Jeff and Will on the morning show at 6 a.m.